Hello friends, this is Jim Rowlands. Welcome to episode 5 of the WTF cast, if you can hear me. If you live in the countryside, as I do, one thing that you really should keep your eye on is the weather forecast. And today we're going to speak to somebody who agrees with me. Enjoy.
Today we're talking to Ysobel Hardy, globetrotter, self-made woman, who actually just, you said WTF, but in the wrong way before we started recording. You've just come back from Guatemala, but we're not going to talk about that. You're going to talk about, what's your WTF?
Watch the forecast.
What's the forecast? What forecast? The economic forecast?
No, the weather forecast. Brits are renowned for constantly talking about the weather. You know, it's one of the huge stereotypes of British people is to talk about the weather all the time. And I now work in the agricultural industry here in France, and I can guarantee that we do it too.
Right, two questions. Why do we always talk about the weather? And the second one is, you're in the wine growing sector. I would imagine that's kind of because I know nothing, but more of a spring autumn thing. So what's happening at the moment?
At the moment, we're pruning, and I mean, not just in vines, but anybody who works in silviculture, so growing trees and things like that, this is the time to prune. Is the winter. If you have fruit trees, you should be pruning them now. And so, yeah, we basically start working as soon as it begins to freeze in kind of November, and then do different jobs until pretty much the middle of July.
But with the weather being weird, I mean, I was looking at this morning in Rennes, for example. I know there are no vines in Rennes, but it went from -8 about 3 days ago to 14 degrees today. Does this mean that the trees are already coming out of their winter thing and then they go back into it, or what? Or how does that work?
This is one of the reasons that so many people talk about the weather so constantly in agriculture. Now particularly is Sunday morning here it was -9. This afternoon I was pruning vines in a t-shirt. That's not normal, you know. I should
you wearing
be
a t-shirt.
I should be wearing insulated socks, 4 layers of clothes, a hat.
So it went from -9 to t-shirt weather in the same day.
Not in the same day. Sunday morning it was -9.
Wow.
Today is Wednesday, so 4 days ago.
And geographically, where are you exactly?
I'm in the French Alps, not very far from Geneva.
Okay. And is this a renowned wine growing place?
We have so in French it's the AOC, in English, sorry, it's the PDO, Protected Designation of Origin.
Okay.
There's the Alps and the Jura are quite well known wine growing regions, both of them.
Is this kind of for you? Is it seasonal, or is it something that you can do all year round in some way or another?
I personally do it seasonally, but in theory, if you have the necessary skills, which include things like driving a tractor, you could work all year round in the vines.
Do you want to?
I do, yes.
Oh, okay. And is this the year that you'll be able to do that? You got your tractor license?
I don't think so. I'm going to a meeting in February with different agricultural employers to ask them why I'm not getting a full-time job, because I have been applying for them, and partly I think it's I don't have the skill set that they require, because there are down periods in any agricultural industry where things are just growing and you can't really do much about it. And that's when you need to be doing maintenance and things like that. So are they looking for somebody who can drive a tractor? Are they looking for somebody who can do mechanical maintenance or machinery? You know, I don't know. So that's something I'm trying to find out at the moment.
No, so you've become an expert in pruning things.
Pruning, debudding, raising, de-leafing, and harvesting.
Can you define all of them? Harvesting, I think I understand. But what the hell are the other ones?
Okay. So pruning essentially means removing any of the branches from last year that you don't want to promote healthy, vibrant growth this year.
Let me come in here. How do I know when I'm looking at a tree or a vine which ones I want and which ones I don't want? Asking for a friend.
You want if imagine you're looking at a branch with lots of little branches going off it,
mm-hmm.
And that big branch is getting too heavy. It's like getting really weighed down. It's probably going to break this year if there's too much fruit or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to prune it back so that you've got one of those little side branches which will become the new main branch. So
Okay.
you're going to go all the way back to the first side branch from the trunk, if you like.
Okay. Right. Carry on with the other three things before harvesting. Teach me.
So we prune, then having pruned, then in May, we will debud, which means that you basically go around and what you want in a grapevine, depending on your PDO, is 3 or 4 new branches per stub that you've kept, if you like, from your pruning.
Okay.
So what we do is we go and look at how many buds there are and we remove the excess.
Okay. And this isn't harming the plant at all?
No, because they're very, very small, but it's very long because you have to do it manually.
How many have you debudded today?
I haven't debudded any today. I've pruned today.
Okay. How many have you pruned today? How many different plants?
I honestly don't know.
Hundreds?
I have I don't count how many I do. Probably in the region of 200, but
wow.
I don't know. I haven't actually counted how many I do in a day,
Now it's one thing to be kind of somebody who likes the countryside and likes being outside and doing things and being active and doing kind of back-breaking work when it's -9 in a t-shirt. Are you enjoying this, or is it or you've just got to do it, or somewhere in the middle?
I really, really love it. I am the happiest I think I've ever been in a job.
Well, because of course, like your last job was teaching English, so how could you possibly be how could you possibly be happy in that? Yeah. All right.
Yeah. No, really, I absolutely love it. I love being outside. Okay, I mean, we don't work, and this is where the weather thing comes in. The problem with seasonal work is you're only paid when you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And normally at this time of year, it should be extremely cold, but quite dry.
Mm.
But this year, it's not. It's been piddling down with rain.
Mm.
And that means we haven't actually been working very much. Because you can't prune when it's pouring with rain, because that can cause illness to enter the plants through the new cuts that you've made.
Is there a change in the climate? Without wanting to say climate change, but is there a change, between this year, last year, what the norm would be, or is it always different?
I've not been doing this for long enough really to say, but everybody around me seems to think this is like definitely not normal. What I can say is that we are getting towards the end of January and everything is in bud, and I don't think that's normal.
Because what happens if it refreezes in February? Do all the buds die?
So the buds, well, it depends how far they go. At the moment, there's no risk, but if the buds actually start and then it freezes, the leaves will die, obviously. And the plant will then have to use a massive amount of energy to create new leaves, because it absolutely needs leaves in order to survive. But having used all of that energy to create new leaves, it probably then won't produce fruit.
And so you'll have to wait another year.
Yeah.
Now, just to finish off, because I don't want to keep you for too long, why are we so obsessed, British people? Why are we so obsessed with the weather? Where does that come from?
I actually don't know. I have a feeling it's because Britain was in the past a almost uniquely maritime and agricultural economy, which are both industries or jobs that are totally dependent on the weather. Now, of course, it doesn't make sense because most people work in climate controlled offices, but I think that historically it's really comes from the fact that people had to know what was going on outside, and had to adapt what they were doing to earn their money to what was coming out the sky at the time. And of course in the UK it changes all the time, so it just makes it that much more interesting.
Few people have said things like, because there are so many local accents, people would start by talking about the weather to give themselves a chance to see if they can actually understand the person that they're talking to before do you think that's an urban myth, or is there some truth in that?
I think it's possible, but I wouldn't have thought that was the main reason, because I mean, if it's anything like where I live here in France, it's not just talking to people that you don't know, it's talking to people that you do, your neighbors. I mean, it's practically the first thing that people say to their neighbors in the morning is, oh, look at the weather we've got today, or isn't it lovely, or oh, gosh, not rain again, or whatever. So I don't think not sure about the judging the regional accent. It's probably a useful thing to do, but people talk about the weather with everybody, and not just strangers.
We don't really go in for such conversations in Brittany. Everybody just says, "Quelle tonne de merde," and that's the end of that.
But it wasn't the end of that at all.
Right.
So after the last recording, I was out there doing my thing in the vines, and I cut the top of my finger off with an electric secateur, and that's always quite exciting. Actually, didn't really hurt, which was quite surprising. But I got to go in an ambulance with the dee-dars and they operated on me and so everything. But that was a month ago, and I'm back at work. It's all healing up nicely. So yeah.
So it was a work accident, or it was at home?
It was a work accident. It was there was 4 of us in the vines, and we were joking and laughing, and I just took my eyes off what I was doing for like a millisecond and cut the top of my finger off.
What was the reaction of your colleagues when you were? I mean, did you scream, or you just said the F word, or what?
I fell to my knees and I said, "I've just cut the top of my finger off." And because we'd been joking around, they all laughed, and I went, "Actually, no, I'm not joking. I have really just cut the top of my finger off." And it turned out I was the only person there with any notion of first aid.
So what? You just put a plaster on the top?
No, well, there weren't any plasters. We were in the middle of nowhere in a grapevine. What you do in that kind of situation is apply pressure to the wound and then raise the wound to try and limit the blood flow. And then you say to somebody, "Can somebody call an ambulance, please?"
And you looked around for the tip of your finger, and you couldn't find it.
I didn't kind of search extensively, but I did look.
I don't know why I'm smiling. This is horrific. I'm sorry, but you're smiling too. So
no, I mean, it really is a very, very small amount. I literally cut the pulpy bit of the top of my finger off. It's really not very much.
Right.
So yeah, and then they were great. As I say, the fire brigade came, because here in France it's the fire brigade that comes to do first aid. So they came and they took a picture of it, because then they had to send it to the
operating block or whatever.
The operators, to decide which hospital they were going to send me to, because some hospitals are better specialized at, actually kind of tendons and nerves, whereas mine was basically just a flesh wound. It's like very stuff.
Tis but a scratch. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, no, it bled surprisingly little.
Oh.
And I was in practically no pain, and even in the ER, when they took me for a X-ray and stuff, the nurses going, "Oh, you must be, it must be painful," and I was going, "Actually, no, it's fine." It's like it felt like I'd shut my finger in a door.
Oh, so that's not exactly fine, but yeah, not
But
life-ending.
it's not like agonizing pain, So it's like, yeah. So
And
yeah,
is it still sore, or is it completely all right now?
Oh, do you really want the gory details?
We don't want to see it, but just tell about the soreness. Where are you on the sore scale?
Yeah, well, it's so the operation they did involves stretching a flap of skin over the bit that was missing. But of course, so that skin then kind of hardens. It gets a bit like callus.
Oh yeah.
And the callus is now everything's healed up, the stitches are all gone and everything else, and the callus is now wearing off, and underneath you've got like very fresh skin. Do you know what I mean? Like when you graze yourself or something like that. So it can be like, if I'm not a bit careful, like it's a bit like, tender, but I'm back at work. So.
And was it difficult? Can you still roll fags?
Since the beginning, in fact, one of the places I work is a restaurant, and I was working last Tuesday, and I took 3 bottles of white out to the big table we were serving, and the owner said to me, "You could be able to open those." And I said, "You don't think I've not drunk for a month, do you?" It's like, you have to be joking. Of course.
So you've just been drinking for a month, yeah?
So yeah, no, I mean, there are things you have to adapt to, that you don't do. The finger is still a little bit swollen, so stuff I still can't really do very well. But
Express your nose.
Yeah, I can still do the middle finger thing. So
all right. One of the things you said, and I misunderstood because I'm deaf, was I understood you said there are 2 great misconceptions or stereotypes, and in fact you said huge stereotypes. One of the huge stereotypes. Give us a couple more stereotypes that you've been confronted with of English or British people in France, which are or are not true.
Okay, I would say, I mean, for me, another one of the big stereotypes, apart from constantly talking about the weather, is the kind of politeness of the Brits. There's that joke about your Frenchman steps on a Britishman's foot, and it's the British man that will say sorry.
Which is kind of true, yeah.
Yeah, I do feel that's true. I mean, and the Brits and their queues as well. Those are things that can't deny it. Then there are other stereotypes I hear here in France. People say to me, for instance, "Oh, you British people, you eat boiled foods," and I'm going, "Well, I don't think that's true, because fish and chips is not boiled, for a start. And what is pot-au-feu if it's not boiled food?" So that one kind of tends to get me a bit riled. And the other one is, of course, who burnt Joan of Arc? And I'm going,
well, we would have boiled her, apparently. So it definitely wasn't us. So what's going on? Just a final word. What's going on now with the vines? Where are you? Is it all starting to happen now?
No, well, here, I don't know in other parts of France, because obviously the climate is all a bit all over the place. Here, luckily, we finished pruning, and nothing is actually yet coming to bud, which is very good, because we need it to wait a little bit longer before it does that. We were worried a month ago that it was going to come into bud very early. In actual fact, it hasn't, which is so quite nice. So now, what's going on now is replacing fence posts, repairing wires, replanting a little bit to fill in the holes, kind of general maintenance work. There's still a little bit of pruning going on. In fact, next week I'm going to a different winery to do some more pruning, but with the manual
metal gloves, yeah.
with a manual secretary.
So somewhere this year there'll be a bottle of wine which tastes of human flesh.
Well, I've been grape picking for over 20 years, and I can guarantee there is human blood in every single bottle of wine you have ever drunk.
Oh my God. Have you seen people doing this kind of thing or worse before? You've seen all sorts of bits getting chopped off.
Not cutting, but I mean, when you're grape picking, you scratch yourself, you cut yourself, or you snip yourself sometimes with the secateurs, and it bleeds a bit. But there's, I guarantee that in a campaign, a grape picking campaign, somebody will have bled in the wine. Somebody will have done. There's just no way that they didn't. It's not usually serious. I mean, not to the scale of what I did.
I remember this coming up during mad cow disease in the 90s in France. They were talking about the fact that in Bordeaux there was blood put into the wine to thicken it up, and that I guess they had to stop doing that because of this big outcry about infected blood and stuff. Yeah. Well, we started off talking about the weather. We ended up talking about horrific, horrible accidents, fish and chips, and it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.